Ever since George Lucas made the biggest mistake of his life by selling Lucasfilm over to Disney and Bob Iger, and Lucas coming to an agreement to mark Kathleen Kennedy as the president of Lucasfilm, ever since 2012, Star Wars has been in a downward spiral. It had a couple of successful spikes, like with Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. I felt that was a good one. Mando Season 2 proved to be very much successful, and Ahsoka has potential, but a lot of fans are remaining very skeptical about that because of how much we have all gone through. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into exactly what's been happening behind closed doors for Indiana Jones 5, The Dial of Destiny, between both George Lucas, Kathy Kennedy, and yes, Steven Spielberg, the executive producer of this film. Now, for those of you that did not know, there has been a lot of drama with Indy 5, both when it was in production. It was a very hellish production, I must add, for multiple factors that we've gone over numerous times. But on top of that, there's been a lot of backstabbing happening, not just for Indiana Jones 5, but also with Star Wars Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte and how it pertains to George Lucas and Kathleen Kennedy. Let's dive right into all of this and what's unraveling and surfacing involving both George, Steven, and Kathy. Now, we know one thing about Indy 5 is that Steven Spielberg, it seems like he is very objective with the production of this film. He doesn't really seem like he's taking a side. Sometimes it comes across like he's humiliating Kathleen Kennedy. Other times he is heavily defending this film and Mangold's vision, yet he doesn't like the ending 100%, yada yada yada. However, alright, with both Steven Spielberg and even Harrison Ford recently promoting Indy 5 heavily to boost ticket sales as they begin to realize the lack of theaters getting actually filled with previously expected theater seats. One major development that has surfaced involves how Spielberg backstabbed George Lucas in a shocking turn of events with Indy 5 in a very big way. What did end up happening behind the scenes is that both George Lucas and Spielberg surprisingly agreed a very long time ago that Short Round, aka Shorty, portrayed by Ke Huy Quan, would make an appearance for the ending of Indy 5 or in the form of a mid-credit scene. Hence the leaks, by the way, that we went over, guys. This is why, of course, they were experimenting on how to properly execute an older version of Shorty by Ke Huy Quan, and the scene was partially shot mixed with storyboards that were not shot and did not get filmed. The scene was a go for a while and was moving forward until Spielberg made a full agreement with Kathy Kennedy after she suggested and insisted to Steven that Shorty should be cut out of the ending and no conversation should happen further of him being involved in a mid-credit scene or an ending scene, since she felt Temple of Doom would be a reminder of a very bad film and heavily criticized in Indy 5. So let me pause here quick, guys. So basically, the main reasoning why George was backstabbed by Spielberg is that he agreed with Kathy Kennedy that inserting Short Round would only bring back bad memories of the Temple of Doom and actually making them remind themselves that that was a bad movie. Honestly, guys, I love Temple of Doom. This is just my take, by the way, and I understand a lot of people out there say it is the worst of the original trilogy, and I get that. I can see how some people have a perspective on that, but I actually like the tone of the Temple of Doom film. It's a different movie, we gotta add that. It's totally different in tone. It's kind of fun in its own way. It has its own style. And it's really hard for me to compare it to Raiders or, The Last Crusade, which, by the way, are the best movies of all time of Indiana Jones in my book. The Last Crusade should have been where Indiana Jones ended, hence The Last Crusade. Alright? So anything ranging from Spielberg here backstabbing George Lucas does not come across as a shocker, because we also have to remember that he was sided with Kennedy for a very long time, but yet he also called her out on many different things that was actually put out there on the internet, where he did say how she would always cut in between sentences and would bring in the worst ideas into the room, etc., etc. This is the problem that I have with Spielberg, is that you can never really get a full focus on exactly who he is really sided with. It seems like he just goes wherever he wants to go. And he backstabbed George Lucas by really sabotaging his vision of throwing in Shorty, aka Short Round, which, by the way, Lucas loves this character dearly because he loves having, child actors in his Star Wars films, hence Jake Lloyd in The Phantom Menace. How could we forget about that, right? So moving onwards, all right? Now, she pressured Steven to agree, and he began to agree with her approach of getting rid of Shorty, aka Short Round, of a surprise cameo toward the tail end besides Marion. George was best described to be very bothered by this development and grew a grudge with Steven Spielberg for actually siding with Kennedy and not defending his own vision of the ending that he wanted to see come to light. Lucas grew very angry with both Steven and Kennedy's defense was that George would be making a big mistake by including Shorty into the end because it would actually take away the limelight of Helena and would also spell a hint of new adventures for old characters that would overshine her. Spielberg reportedly didn't even try to defend Lucas and what he wanted on screen in the long run for Indy 5 and immediately sided with Kathleen Kennedy. So here's the problem again that I have with Steven Spielberg, alright? Steven Spielberg, alright, this guy and George really made Indiana Jones possible. If it weren't for these two guys, this duo, if you will, we wouldn't have the Indy that we love today, looking back, alright? Discounting the Crystal Skull, of course, everything aside from that was 100% perfection in my opinion. Some of you guys out there don't like Temple of Doom, hey, that's perfectly fine. You all have your own opinion, it's a part of being a human being after all, but look, Steven Spielberg, at the very least, could have sided with George Lucas because he obviously knows what George went through with Star Wars. He obviously knows what George went through with the sequel trilogy films and how none of his concepts got spilled into there and how he was also banished. He was literally banished from the sets of Acolyte and Skeleton Crew by Kathy Kennedy, John Watts, and Leslie Headland. We've talked about that too. That's why he was not allowed to see any of the set build or any of the sets being constructed or anything like that. And Kathy felt like if he was there or if his presence was there, that basically it would contribute to the cast and the crew to want to have Lucas's ideas come to life. Also, it kind of works hand in hand with how Leslie did say on record in a podcast of those fans that only expect George in the room are, misogynists. And she literally said that back in 2019. So yeah, I mean, this is why Lucas was backstabbed by, of course, Steven Spielberg behind closed doors for Indy 5. He only wanted Shorty, aka Short Round, to come into the ending. And how much does Disney look like a fool now, given that Ke Huy Quan is an Oscar-winning actor for Everything Everywhere All at Once? They look ridiculous. So there you go, guys. I would like to hear your take on all of this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again. From night to moon, we hear them moans again.